Welcome to Ready Lesson 18 for 7th grade, Comparing and Contrasting Texts. In this lesson, we will be comparing and contrasting different types of texts. Now, remember, to compare and contrast is to tell how two or more things are alike and different. And we do this in our daily lives. We compare the different type of music we listen to, and we contrast the different type of clothing that we like to wear. And one way to compare and contrast texts is to analyze the ways in which different authors present information and evidence on the same topic. And you can analyze texts by noting how authors advance different interpretations of facts. Now, an interpretation is an explanation of what something means. And you can interpret the fact that, for example, a fire truck is parked by the school by, assuming that there might be a fire in the school, or maybe they're there for a drill, or maybe they're there for an inspection. Now, comparing and contrasting text will help you as a reader understand each author's interpretation of the evidence, and it will also help you better understand the points of view surrounding informational topics that you read. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Imagine that two artists use the same paint to paint a mountain scene. One creates a dark, scary landscape, and the other paints a bright, peaceful place. Even though the artists use the same materials and paint the same subject, their results depend on the effects they want to achieve and the colors they choose to create those effects. In the same way, authors may write about the same topic, but depending on their purpose, they may choose to focus on different details and evidence. As a result, they produce very different products. So the directions here say, look at the cartoon below and think about how the characters are reacting to the poster. What if they both decide to write reports about global warming? How might each of them approach the topic? So here we have a poster that says stop global warming, and you see two polar bears standing on a small chunk of ice. The girl looks at it and she thinks, well, what causes global warming? And the boy looks at it and he thinks, what's going to happen to those poor bears? Now, if they both were to write a paper, it's pretty safe to assume that the girl is going to focus on the causes of global warming, while the boy is going to focus on the effects of what's happening from global warming, which is what's happening to the polar bears. Now it says, read the information in this chart. Which facts do you think each of the two characters would emphasize when writing about global warming? So we have three different columns here. In the first column it says general facts. Earth's average temperatures are increasing. Rising temperatures result in the melting of polar ice caps, and polar ice melt causes sea levels to rise. Now it's pretty safe to assume that both reports would probably take all these general facts and use them in the report. Now let's look at the second column. It says causes of the problem. Fossil fuel emissions release heat-trapping gases into the atmosphere, and the additional heat raises local temperatures and in turn impacts Earth's climate. It's pretty safe to assume that only the girl would probably use this on her report, while the boy wouldn't really focus on this, because remember, her thought was what causes global warming, and so she's going to be focusing on the causes of the problem. The third column says effects on wildlife. Loss of habitat due to ice melts results in decreasing animal populations, and change in feeding and migration patterns puts animals at risk. So it's pretty safe to assume that the boy is going to be focusing on this information for his report because, again, he is more concerned about what is happening to the wildlife due to global warming. So although they're seeing the same exact poster, they're approaching the topic differently. And so this is what we're going to be doing by comparing and contrasting texts by different authors today. So while both students would probably use the information in the first column, the girl probably would also use the evidence in the second column, while the boy would focus on facts from the third one. This always keep in mind that an author's purpose for writing shapes the way he or she presents key information, as well as which facts and evidence are emphasized. Okay, let's move on to part 2. So it says, read the following scientific accounts about global warming. So remember, every time you see an account, it's informational text. So global warming, why? Scientists who study climate models and climate patterns are concerned that the Earth's average temperatures seem to be increasing. They also report that a warm-up of even a few degrees will have far-reaching effects on climate, wildlife, human food production, and fresh water supplies. Why is this happening? To understand global warming, imagine that our planet is wrapped in a blanket. The blanket is made up of carbon dioxide and other gases that collect and trap the sun's heat in the Earth's atmosphere. It's important to understand that this blanket serves as a protection from the intensity of the sun and its dangerous rays. The burning of fossil fuels and other human activities, however, have changed the makeup of its protective covering. In simple terms, by adding more gases, we've added more layers, and the blanket traps more heat than it should. Heating that changes our environment. So it says, explore how to answer this question. How does the author's purpose shape the focus of the account and the key information he presents? Now, look, it says in the first paragraph, the author points out the problem caused by increasing temperatures and then asks a question. In the second paragraph, he answers that question by explaining more about the process of global warming. Now, the account doesn't exactly tell the author's purpose, but I can figure it out based off of what I read. So if I look in the first paragraph, the author points out the problem of global warming and asks why it's happening. And then later on in the second paragraph, he answers that question. So this tells me what the author is writing to explain why global warming is occurring. Now, based on the information in these two paragraphs of the text, I think the author's main focus is to inform readers about what global warming is and what causes this rise in Earth's temperature. He explains the process to help clarify this information for readers. So I'm going to take this information that I see, and I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to go down to this chart, and I'm going to put it into this chart. So it says, in the chart below, write the focus of this account. After you've read the account on the next page, fill in columns 2 and 3, and then compare and contrast the ideas you wrote. So based off of the first account that I've read so far, I can tell that the focus of this first account is to give a basic explanation of the main cause of global warming, or why Earth's temperature is increasing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type that in right here. So it gives a basic explanation of the main cause of global warming, or why Earth's temperature is increasing. Let me go ahead and fix this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go on and we're going to read the second account, and then we're going to come back and finish this chart. So let's move on to part 3. It says, read another account about global warming, use the closed reading in the hints to help you complete the chart, and then answer the question. The side effects of warming. Global warming widely impacts both Earth's climates and the environment as a whole. The Arctic regions in particular are suffering due to a climate change. Glacial ice is melting at an alarming rate. The amount of ice lost in recent years equals the combined area of Alaska, Texas, and Washington. This change to the Arctic landscape endangers many of the creatures living there. Polar bears, for example, depend on glacial ice. It allows them to travel far from land and open water to find their favorite prey, seals. A decrease in this ice limits the bears' ability to reach their prey, thus reducing their chance of survival. Only by changing human habits that contribute to climate change, such as the use of fossil fuels, can we stop the harmful effects of global warming on wildlife. So in the closed read, it says the accounts here and on page 180 both tell about global warming, but they use key information differently. Underline any facts in this account that are similar to those in the first one, and star any unique details. This is information to complete the chart on the previous page. So if I look, I can actually go ahead and grab my underline tool. And I do see some facts in this account that are similar to those in the first one. The very first sentence itself is very similar to the rest of the account. So global warming widely impacts both the Earth's climate and the environment as a whole. The other account also did discuss how it endangers many of the creatures that are living there. And it also did talk about how human habits contribute to climate change, such as fossil fuels, and this is what's also causing global warming. So now I can go ahead and I can go up to my chart, and I can put the focus of the second account. So the focus on the second account is that Arctic wildlife is at risk because of global warming, specifically the melting of glacial ice. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that here in this box. So Arctic wildlife is at risk because of global warming, specifically the melting of glacial ice. Okay, and so now I need to try to figure out the ideas in both accounts. Well, obviously both accounts are discussing global warming, and they are both discussing that it is causing environmental changes. And both did discuss that human activities cause global warming. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in this chart, in the chart here. So global warming is, global warming is causing far-reaching environmental changes, and human activities cause global warming. So now that I've answered this chart, I can go ahead and continue on to the next page, which will be in, or the rest of the following page, which will be in part 2. So come back for part 2 so we can answer the question.